Thank you so much for joining us. We've gathered some friends here and we're just going to have a little bit of chat about some of the things that are going on in our culture at the moment, particularly with reference to anxiety and mental health with the coronavirus and all that lockdown stuff that's happening around us at the moment. And we're just going to have a chat and I hope it's helpful. We're going to begin by just introducing ourselves. So my name's Mark and I'm the vicar at All Saints Church in Weston. Pete, tell us about you.
Yeah, I'm Peter and I'm a clinical psychologist and I go to the same church. I work with kids and adults with brain injury and I'm doing a lot of that online actually rather than going to see them because of the current circumstances.
Great. Joe, tell us about you.
I'm Joe and I'm a counsellor for children, young people and young adults and also doing a lot of Zoom sessions at the moment.
Great. Chrissy.
I'm Chrissy. I am a GP, but mostly I'm working in hospital in the acute medicine setting and very much not doing that via Zoom.
Okay. So in person? In
person, face to face, which is great.
Brilliant. Okay. So, Pete, you're going to kick us off. Tell us about what's going on in kind of culture at the moment and in society in response to all this stuff.
Well, this is dangerous and quite a dangerous virus rampaging around, and there's the biggest intervention that has happened in this country to stop it spreading, which is relation to social isolation. And it looks as if it's working really well in terms of stopping this curve from going up, bringing this R down. But there are some drawbacks to social isolation, and what we're seeing, what we're experiencing in our work, and also what we see, what we're experiencing ourselves, we're seeing quite an increase in anxiety, low mood, depression, an impact on our lives. And as a psychologist, I normally reach for the data, and there are. It's early days yet looking at published papers, but there's been a recent paper out saying what we think is going on is actually going on. There's an increase in anxiety in the general population, in people with mental health conditions as well, but it's across the board. And that's across the age range as well, adults and children. What this particular study sees is that I'll read out some of the summary. Self-isolating prior to lockdown. This is a survey about 600 UK adults, and self-isolating prior to lockdown, increased feelings of isolation since lockdown, and having concerns, worries about COVID-19 and that impact on their livelihood was linked with poorer mental health and poorer well-being and poorer quality of life. And on the other side of it, on the more positive side, if people perceived that people were looking kinder, doing more kind things around the place, and community connectedness, people are drawing together, or if people are actually an essential worker, they had better mental health and better well-being outcomes. So actually the data in mental health is very early days to get this kind of stuff, but it's reflecting our personal experience, I would say.
Yeah. And Chrissy, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so myself and colleagues are seeing lots of anxious people. So people with pre-existing mental health problems are struggling because their normal support networks and the things that keep them going are not functioning as normal. And across the board, there's just anxiety. So it's a big spectrum, and depending on what your normal state is, you're at different points on the spectrum. But even the most laid back people are anxious. There's there's a constant low level of worry, and that varies day to day, hour to hour, depending on what's going on. But everyone is anxious to varying levels, and it's hard, really hard.
Yeah. Joe, what are you seeing?
A similar story, really. Generally, there's a rise in anxiety and also low mood and feelings of depression, sadness, hopelessness, and a need for social interaction and connection. There's a big one. There's a massive gap at the moment for people to be around each other, be in community, and there seems to be a lot of people recognising the importance of that now. Now it's being taken away for a time, seeing the importance of that, particularly in children and young people. We're seeing the isolation causing a rise in anxiety and a desperation for an answer, and an answer out of the uncertainty, an answer that takes them out of that place of not knowing. And at the moment, we don't have an answer. And so it's looking at how do we together work through this? How do we together get to a place of peace and a place of calm, even in a place of uncertainty?
Mm. So there's a whole bunch of things here that people can't control, aren't there? Just kind of fire some of those at me.
Oh, right. Well, can't control the virus. And the anxiety, I would say, is about uncertainty about the future. And it's a negative interpretation of this uncertainty. And so I'm seeing people have two justified fears, actually, that they might catch the disease, people they love might catch it, and there might be a bad end to that having caught it. So there's a disease-related anxiety, but there's also definitely a concern about welfare and well-being and having jobs at the end of it and being able to live life the way it was. So certainly those two large areas of concern.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is kind of prevalent for all of us, isn't it? You know, none of us can escape that set of worries. And even though you're three professionals, that's presumably part of your story as well. What kind of things can people do in a season like this? Let's be practical. What's it look like?
I think it's really important just to be real and to recognise that it's okay not to be okay. And we're so reliant on social media to connect us with the world, but it's not really any different to the rest of the time in social media, that people put their highlights, they put this parenting win, this beautiful sunny day, this is great, isn't lockdown wonderful, look at this, I've spring cleaned my house. You get the highlights, not the 99% of the time when they are tearing their hair out, when they're fed up. And when you're on social media, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people and go, gosh, but how are they managing to work and do all this craft with their children, and they've dug a pond, all sorts of stuff.
That was me.
That is out there. That is brilliant, and it's encouraging to see what people are doing, but you have to remember that that's not the reality of all the time. And actually being brave and going, do you know what, today is a bad day and I'm not okay, is really refreshing. And the times that in the groups I'm in on WhatsApp that people have said that, one person says it and actually people go, I'm really glad you said that, because do you know what, today is awful, or yesterday I lost the plot, or I don't know how I'm going to get through this, or I can't do this. And just accepting that it's okay to not be okay, and that it's okay to share that, I think goes a long way to taking the pressure off and getting through it together, because you're not in it alone. You're not the only person feeling overwhelmed, like you're dropping all the balls.
And that recognition of the fact that it's okay not to be okay, and to feel in this time, to feel anxiety, to feel anger, to feel impatient, to feel in a place of kind of reacting faster than usual. That's all okay, and as we start to become increasingly vulnerable and authentic with ourselves first and foremost, but then also our family members, maybe our friends, the people around us, over time, then our patience level can then have an opportunity to start to increase with each other. And also our level of grace for each other. There's moments where you might spot a difference in someone's character, and you might be in a place where you could justifiably say, "Stop it! You're wrong." It's that patience level is able to increase to a place where we go, you know what? There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment in each of us that we can't explain, and we can't fully grasp, and so. You know what? It's okay not to be all right in this moment.
Yeah. I would say compassion for self and others is such a cool thing. It can do so much in a very sort of distressed sort of scenario. But there's also stuff like looking after your own body. I'm reading stuff out from Every Mind Matters website, which we'll put on as a link. Looking after your own body, getting a decent diet, exercise, well-balanced meals. There's a whole bunch of stuff around that. Certainly the socialization stuff that you mentioned. Stick to the facts is another one. I love that because we can so often go off on a tangent and speculate. My favorite thing about this, when we first went in, I'd normally stop work at 1, listen to World at 1, to hear what's going on in the world. And I realized World at 1 was it's a 45-minute program, 5 minutes of news and 35 to 40 minutes of speculation. And I had to turn it off after 5 minutes because the facts were there and then the rest was speculation. I could feel myself getting anxious as they was beginning to talk about the economy, about the world's never going to be the same. But sticking to the facts is a really powerful one.
Can I bring us back just to one other thing that you said, Pete, about how can we be compassionate with ourselves and others? How does that work?
Wow. I think as Chrissy and Joe were saying, notice being real with yourself to start with, noticing what you're thinking about yourself and about other people, and pausing before you make any judgment about it. Say they're wrong, they're right. I can think of a number of high-profile leaders that we want to sort of throw insults at, but before we even do that, we just say, hang on, is this a kind thing that we're doing? Would I want this to be written up? This person is the way we're saying to Donald Trump or Boris Johnson or whatever. Be compassionate. So it does need some self-control, but just that moment to pause, stop and think, is this a kind thing? That's to other people, but also to oneself. And I think certainly we all have thoughts that go on about, I really should be doing this. I should be much better at this. I shouldn't have shouted at my kids. Oh no, what an idiot I am. There's just pausing before we get that far and saying, notice what you're doing here. How helpful is that? Are you being kind to yourself? Notice the stress you're under. This is a normal stress response, and being kind to oneself and to others I think they're really crucial things. Not easy.
Not easy.
I think there are just practical things as well of just acknowledge if you're having a bad day, do you know what? If the kids just have to watch TV, they watch TV. If you don't do homeschooling, you don't do it. If the bathroom isn't cleaned, it doesn't matter. If you have microwave meals or pizza for dinner, this is a strange time and, it's fine. Bad days, bad weeks, just trying to kind of reset the bar a bit and just taking the pressure off of your expectations of what you can do. And if it's a bad day, just go, do you know what, let's just call it, let's just go and do something fun. I'm going to read a book, we're going to play a game, we're going to watch a film together. Just allowing yourself to do that rather than going, I should do this, I've got to do this, I haven't done it, and just berating yourself for not doing it. Just actually being kind to yourself. Probably doing what you would tell a friend to do if they were having a hard time. Just taking that advice yourself.
Great. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think a big one in all of this is obliterating the shame and stigma attached to difficulties and mental health issues, the rising of mental health issues, or just not having it all together. And being honest about that with yourself and with other people. And it might be that in this time, you need to reach out to that friend. It might be in this time you need to seek extra support, and that's all right. That's absolutely fine. And I think if we can all be honest together, we can start to bring that level of shame down, because it keeps us imprisoned. And I feel like this is a huge opportunity for us together as a local community, but national and worldwide, to scrap this sense of shame within not having it together. And just looking at kind of practical stuff, kind of having time out. So whether it is for your child, so you're encouraging them, or if you're a young person, you want time out. In terms of being away from people, but not just that, but being away from the kind of shoulds in your life. And for adults as well, if you're a parent or you're single, no matter what age you are, having that time out to yourself and saying to yourself, I'm going to care for myself in this time. In order for us to live well and to serve others well and to be kind, we need to have a charging time, a place where we can be with ourselves and God as well. And be able to have a reset and a recharge. And so a big one for me, and something I use myself, is having that time out.
Can we, we're going to kind of change tack in a moment, but just before we get there, we're kind of talking mostly at the moment about sort of normal anxiety, worry that we're all feeling, having bad days, being overwhelmed by stuff. But actually there'll be times when this is overwhelming for us as individuals. There'll be times when this just gets on top of us. How do we reel that back in? What do we do when it's kind of gone beyond just normal worry, normal anxiety and fear? What do we do with that?
Sorry, go on, Chris.
Right, it's kind of what Joe's saying about, it's okay to not be okay and to ask for help. That actually there's so much stuff out there, that recognizing that if you are struggling and it's bad day after bad day, that you're not in it alone, but you need to tell people. There needs to be friends, GPs, finding a counsellor, just finding some outlet, finding some way to talk about it and seek help, because we are seeing people with mental health, they're struggling if they've got a history of mental health problems, because all their coping mechanisms and all their support networks are falling apart. So we can be mindful of that if we have friends or family or neighbours who we know are vulnerable in that way, to look out for them, to kind of ask the question, asking people if they are okay, sometimes to allow people to kind of say it's not okay, and encouraging people to seek professional help, because there's lots of stuff there, we're seeing it and we are there to help, but we have to know about it, so people have to be encouraged, and you have to look out for those around you. Because sometimes it needs someone else to ask help on someone else's behalf.
And the same with kids as well, so it's really key to be listening out to what the kids are saying to you about how they're feeling. And I think what you're saying, Chrissy, is modelling to them that it's okay to talk about emotions and feelings, and it's okay to be not okay. So to encourage them to be able to talk about it is an important thing, because as you say, there's a lot of help out there. There are lots of really good approaches to these issues as well, when they become completely overwhelming, that are evidence-based, that work really well. So I think the thing about certainly get it out and speak about it. Sometimes some of the people I work with are really reluctant to talk about their feelings, because they think they might lose control or something. But actually, and I just saw somebody the other day who was saying, actually, I was so afraid of talking about it, and I spoke about it, and actually that solved the problem for me, being able to just talk about it. It was the fear of not talking about it that became such a stressful thing in itself. Yes, they were tearful, but what happened? Tears led to like a compassionate response from the person they were talking to. So the fear that they had about looking a complete fool or whatever it is, it was an unjust, unfounded fear. So I would certainly, encourage people to find somebody that they trust, to talk about it and cry about it. It's okay. That's what we're here to do. That's part of what makes us human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So, folks, let's just change gear for this last bit. And because the thing is, we're all people of faith. We're all Christians, and trying in our own way to follow Jesus. And I know for me, when all this kicked off, I suddenly found that everything that I knew, everything that I knew how to do, was gone. Just with a series of 2 announcements from the government, just blown out of the water, and you kind of and I found myself in this context where the list of things that I didn't have answers for was suddenly a lot longer than the list of things that I did have answers for. And I wonder, as Christians, what difference does this make to you as you're in this context? Because we're all in it. What difference does it make for you?
Big question. Right at the end of it, Revelation talks about, the book of Revelation talks about there'll be a time when there's no more death, no more crying. And actually, that's like the big backstop, for me, that there's a reassurance that all of this suffering, all of this, and it's not, decrying or minimizing what's going on. Actually, there's a massive plan in all this, and it's stuff will in the end resolve in a beautiful, I'm just thinking musically, like a cadence when the music ends, comes to a real climax, and it is actually okay in the end. So that's a sort of sounds a bit fluffy, but it's a real hopeful ending. But more immediately for me, Christ himself, the way he dealt with individuals and worked with individuals, saw the stuff we've been talking about, listening to people, being there for people, being compassionate. What a fabulous model. So I think those 2 things, the big concept, but also a beautiful model of showing compassion in extremely distressing circumstances, a fabulous combination for me personally.
For me, it comes down to my faith and prayer and worship in this time. And so my faith in Jesus through everything. And we all have suffering and pain in our lives, but at the moment we seem to be doing that all together at the same time. And so it's even more of a time for me to have faith, not just for myself, but the people around me, the people that are connected to my friends and my family and my colleagues and my clients and the people I see at the shop, to say, Jesus, I put my trust in you. Through everything, I put my trust in you. And the outworking of that faith in him changes me from the inside out, because it changes my thoughts and the way I perceive life, and perceive life and death and what happens after I die. It changes the way I respond to others and how I love others. It changes how I respond to when I mess up and I get it all completely wrong and I drop the ball completely with myself, maybe my marriage, with my clients, with my work, with all of it, because I'm a human being. And it makes me go, God, I put my faith in you and not in myself. And that works out a lot better than trying to do everything at my own strength. And then prayer and worship, being able to look away from what's right in front of my face, but to look up and be real with God and just go, firstly, I worship you. I just say that I give you my worth. I place my worth in you. But also, God, this is really, really hard. I'm suffering now. I'm in pain now, and I need you. Would you come into my life? Would you make a way in the people around me's lives and bring a change? And if that doesn't happen, God, that I still put my trust in you and put my faith in you. And in doing that, we're walking along this journey of life, day by day, through struggles, but also through joys, with something that's way above our own understanding and our thinking and our doing. But it's looking up to something that's incredible and magnificent. And the Bible talks about the kingdom of heaven, and that kingdom of heaven being here right now, something we can access. So I'm not just sat here on this Zoom call as Joe with my 25 years of life experience and my 5 years of therapy experience, but as a child of God. And for me, that changes everything. And it doesn't mean that everything's perfect. It really doesn't. But it does change the way I see and experience all of this.
Yeah. Brilliant. Joe, that's really helpful. What about you, Chrissy?
So I guess actually being on the front line, I had quite a lot of anxiety. I'm used to kind of, I see sick people all the time, and that's, normal. But I found myself having kind of almost tidal waves of fear of this unknown, of what I was going to face at work, of the impact of me and my family, and actually just being able to tell people. So I had kind of a group of people from church, some frontline workers. We've got a WhatsApp group that I could just be like, do you know what? Today I am irrationally really fearful for my family, that I'm in tears, and I know God's in control, but right now it doesn't feel like it, and this is really hard. And having people there to pray, kind of going into a work situation where I was out of my depth, doing things I wasn't used to doing, knowing that people were praying, that God was with me, that I wasn't going into it alone. And I found some really good kind of worship songs, like one of we're called to be courageous, and kind of I would just listen to it on a loop, just getting into that. It's all right, actually, this is terrifying, but God is kind of with us. And actually, it wasn't nearly as bad as we were expecting. The RUH was never even close to capacity. It coped really well, and so the fear was there. God was with me, and actually he's in it, that we've been very well prepared locally. It's fine, and I think it's reassuring for people to know that actually the hospital's been fine. There's always been space, there's always capacity there. So on a practical level, it's been all right. But it's hard. I saw a video with kind of someone writing out words, praying sort of dear God, and starting a prayer and then kind of scrapping his letters. In the end, you just had dear God and a jumble of letters in a heap, amen. And I thought, do you know what, that's right, because I don't know what to say. It's hard, and my faith is shaky at times like this, and just being like, I don't even know what you're doing, and I don't know how to pray, and I don't know what to do. And the response was, dear child, I know, amen. And I've just found that so helpful, that actually, what Joe was saying is really inspiring, and it's amazing to listen to and really encouraging to hear that. But actually, it's fine if you're not feeling like that, and you're just in this bit of like, I'm just struggling through this, and it's hard being away from community and knowing that God is still there, even when you don't feel him. I know that he is with us and has a plan, and just clinging to that as the waves of fear come and you're out of control. And it's just been, it's a journey, and knowing that God is there despite it all. But if it's okay just to shout or scream or not have anything to say, just be going, what a mess, God. And he goes, I know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the common theme from the three of you is it is not about, hey, I pray and everything's fine. It's actually, there's a reality here that there is stuff that we can't fix, that won't go away, we can't solve, but it's finding some sense of peace within that, even if the stuff's still there, You know, so it's not like you pray and then, hey, everything was fine and I was super peaceful. It's a different sort of conversation that all three of you are talking about. One of my roles is obviously to take funerals, and we, a lot of the time people land on Psalm 23, and there's that sense in that psalm of God walking with you through the valley. Yeah. And then actually it's not that you pray and everything's fixed, but actually it's that you know that he's with you even in the midst of it. And that doesn't necessarily, fix the anxiety. It doesn't, necessarily take the fear away, but it somehow changes it. And somehow it's different.
Definitely, there's a longer perspective in this, and I just experienced that a couple of weeks ago. Oh, that's why that happened. 35 years ago, something dreadful happened, and we had in our home group, we were saying, well, why don't we just ask him what he wants to tell us. And actually, at that moment, this thing, Joe, Chrissy, Mark, you're talking about, it's a constant communication you can have. You can ask God, what's this about? And I did experience this last week. Something that happened for me 35 years ago, which I've always felt was a really difficult situation. I couldn't understand why would God let that happen. Gave me the answer to that like 35 years later.
Wow.
Now I get it. So, this lovely picture of the longer game, maybe much more than 35 years, I don't know, but it's a lovely thing.
Brilliant. Folks, thank you so much for joining in this little conversation. And if you've been watching, I hope that you found some of this helpful. And I'm now going to be really mean. I'm going to ask you each for one thing that you want to close with. Short. One thing. Pete.
Simple stuff. Jesus said, and this is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbour as yourself. This is what is working in society for these disastrous times.
Brilliant. Thanks. Chrissy.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think it just really is just being kind to yourself, to other people, to look for the opportunities in your street with your neighbours, of just looking out for people, modelling that it's okay not to be okay, and asking the questions, not being British and keeping quiet, but actually going out there and just going, actually, how are you? Because that might be the one thing that someone needs to hear.
Brilliant. How are you? Great. Joe?
Mine is just be real with yourself, with your partners, with your families, friends, and people that are around you trust, and also people that you can help as well. And ultimately being real with God. He's there all the time.
Great. Folks, thank you so much. And if you've been watching, I hope you found some of this conversation helpful. And there'll be some resources on the website page and in the description links for wherever this gets posted. God bless. Take care, and ask other people how they are, and open up, be honest about how you are as well with them. God bless. Take care.